So today I'm here with Kenna, and Kenna is a client of mine who lives in California. And I have asked her if she would be willing to talk about her Pilates experience, and she graciously has agreed. So thank you, Kenna.
Yes, of course.
And can I start this by asking you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Something that you think we should know, what things were like before we started Pilates?
Yeah, I just turned 47. I have four children, ages 16 down to 6. So I had a pretty serious diastasis recti. Did I say that right?
Yes, you did.
Diastasis recti. It was about 2.5 fingers wide. And I knew what it was and I knew how it was affecting me. I had some pretty severe lower back issues going on. My lower back would spasm or just grab me in a certain way and I almost couldn't even move. And I had chiropractic care. I was trying to do exercises. I was not getting any traction with my exercises. I had come across one program that I purchased. I couldn't get past the first level. It had all of these tiers built into it. They said you couldn't move on until you reached this certain degree of, success with the first level. And I couldn't get there. And I was honestly feeling quite hopeless. And it probably bears stating that that I did have 2 C-sections and then 2 VBACs. So my body had been through the gamut. I was feeling pretty desperate, honestly, at that point. I felt so much older than my years. I remember thinking to myself that I felt like I was over 50 because of the mobility issues that I was having. And I just felt stuck, just totally stuck.
What kind of skepticism did you approach Pilates with? Because I know that you found me online. So what kind of thoughts were running through your head? Was it kind of like a last ditch effort, or what were you thinking when you found me?
I had seen other people who did Pilates who had gotten results. And I think the thing that really brought me to a point of actually hoping this could help me was reading your story that you posted on Facebook. We knew each other before. We were already friends on Facebook because we grew up in the same hometown. And so I'd been following some of the things you posted, but when you actually posted your description of where you started, when you began your own training and the struggles that you were dealing with, I felt this flicker of hope that maybe it could help me too. And it was the first hope that I had felt in a really long time. So I was afraid maybe that I was too far gone. So I wasn't skeptical about Pilates. I was skeptical about me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. So you kind of described a little bit about life before. When we began working together, how would you describe your transformation? What happened?
Well, okay, when we first started working together, the very first lesson, I came out of that with a real sense of hope. But because of the way that you introduced all of the movements and how thorough you were, I was so elated that I could actually do what you were asking me to do. And so it just really started this intense hope and an intense longing. It just started off so small. And I did not see how these tiny little steps that you were having me take, these little movements that we were doing, was really going to make that big of a difference. And I will say it took 2 weeks of just being really dedicated. And I was exercising every day because at that point I was all in. Yes. And I would say right at the 2-week mark was when I began to realize that things were changing. And that just got me so excited because I was being able to do things that at 46 years old, I had given up on being able to do. And that sounds so sad, but it's so true. Yeah. It was more that moment of realizing that my body was responding to the training. It wasn't the training that I was concerned with. It was my end of the equation and seeing that it was actually helping. And then having my husband say, you know what, I can tell. I can see when you're walking across the room that you're not, you're not as uncomfortable, or, various comments that he made that were really telling me that it was making a big difference. And some of those things I thought I was never going to overcome suddenly started to look like I could overcome them.
So did you have any areas like measurable progress, like I can now lift this that I couldn't lift before, or anything that you saw change in daily life?
Well, so some of those things took longer, but one of the things that I noticed quickly was having 4 babies. I had been dealing with a certain degree of incontinence. It wasn't terrible. But it was annoying. And I realized after about 3 weeks that wasn't being a problem anymore. And that totally amazed me. So there was that, and that was measurable. And it it has continued. It wasn't one of those things that just was there, was progress for a while, then it went away. It's stayed that way.
And I want to add one
I
thing
think
in the interview, that again, 75% of women suffer from some sort of incontinence or pelvic floor issue, some kind of prolapse or something in their lifetime. So it is a big deal. And it's one of those things that if you have experienced it, you are not alone. It is the vast majority of us that will experience it.
Yeah, and I think that it's significant to point out that was one of the first things that I truly noticed change.
Yeah.
And so it's fixable. I noticed it was later on, after probably more like 10 weeks of practice and training with you, that I realized that I could vacuum. And I don't know, in England, I think they use a different word. Do they say Hoover in England? I don't know. But anyway.
Vacuuming though.
Yeah. So before, one of the things that I knew, and I had to build my life around it, was if I was going to vacuum, I had to take the next day and sit, because whatever is going on in my back, it would so irritate that I could hardly move without that grabbing sensation, like, my back had locked up. So I realized, I think it was right around 10 weeks that I was vacuuming, and I realized that I was automatically activating my abdominal muscles. And then the next day I didn't have that pain. And that was remarkable. I mean, these are just basic daily life activities where I was starting to see the benefit of the training. It really made a big difference.
Yes. Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for actually sharing so much detail as well, because I know some can become very personal to people, and they're shy of sharing them. But thank you for being willing. I want to ask you some other questions, which might put you a little on the spot. Like, what was it like working with me? So specifically, not just learning Pilates, but how was your experience working with me?
I think you're a magnificent Pilates instructor. I have no one to compare you with, though. I think that I found you to be very thorough and very encouraging. And I always felt like I got my money's worth. When I left our lesson, I felt like you put in plenty to make it worthwhile. And I never felt like you were distracted. I always felt like you were very tuned in to what I was doing, and that when it was time for my lesson, I had your attention. I think that your ability to answer my questions was really remarkable, because I'm such a questioner. I'm always asking all these questions, and I'd interrupt our exercises to ask you some silly question about, well, is this muscle supposed to do this? And you always were very patient and answered my questions very thoroughly, and I appreciated that. I just felt like you did a very good job. I always felt very comfortable. I felt like I could tell you anything. If I was, if something wasn't working, you were always receptive to that. I enjoyed it. I thought you did a good job.
Well, was there anything that happened that you felt was totally unexpected through this journey?
Totally unexpected. this is kind of specific in a sense, but the pain that I was dealing with was in my lower back. Obviously, I was aware that I had abdominal weakness. And I will say, I did not expect to progress as quickly as I did. So that's probably the bigger surprise for me, was how quickly these things that had been tormenting me for years started to fix. I think one of the things that was totally unexpected was realizing how little strength I had in my middle back,
Mhm.
and the exercises that we did and that I'm still doing for my middle back and my upper back, how much of an impact that had overall. That was very unexpected.
I think a lot of that also has to do with how dedicated you've been. You have,
Mm.
practiced daily. And, I think the spark was lit and it became a big fire, and you were insatiable for making progress. Did work at it. So
I
I
was
think,
desperate.
yeah, a lot of that progress is
Yeah.
because of, how much you really desired it. And I think that's key for
Yeah. Well, that's true.
things. Yeah.
Yeah. And I did have to make time for it, and it was not easy, but I really wanted to fix these things. And when I started to feel like it was getting traction, it became a very high priority, because it just suddenly it was within reach, and I knew that if I kept at it, I was going to get out of this pit that I'd been in physically. The fact that within, how many lessons did we do? 14 before I had to stop. I think it was 14 or 15, I'm not sure. But
Yeah.
within that amount of time, the amount of muscle control that I gained, and the amount of strength that I found, that was truly developed during that time, was amazing to me. I didn't expect it to be such a quick process. So I
Yeah.
guess how quickly it happened was the big surprise for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and just because you mentioned that we had to stop, I'm going to say that Kenna is in that area of California where there were lots of fires, and she nearly lost her house, and she's still not got everything back. But we've been trying to do this interview for a while. Um, so,
Yeah.
and of course, all your instruction has been online, and
Mhm.
there's always a little hiccup here and there with the internet connection and things like that. But have you found that to be workable? Would you, if someone is saying,
Yes.
well, I don't know, it's online, would you advise someone to give it a go?
would. I would, without any reservation. I don't know that anybody could teach online, but you made it work. And I think that um, if anybody was hesitant about trying it, I would say just try it. Just try it. And don't worry about making it perfect or finding the right angle, because just do what you can. I found that it worked well, and that you were able to communicate enough verbally for me to feel confident that I was doing what I needed to do. So, we made it work. And I would definitely say give it a try.
Good. Okay. Well, I want to thank you very much for the time you've taken and your willingness to share with us.
Yeah, absolutely.